Spring has sprung. And in this episode, I share the changes I've noticed in the last week or so as the breeding season ramps up. And I let you know what I've been up to and what's coming up this year. Welcome to the Casual Birder podcast. I'm Suzy Buttress. As a casual birder, I take pleasure in watching the wild birds around me, wherever I am. In my show, I share the joy of birding. I tell you about the birds I've seen, speak with experts and enthusiasts, go on bird outings, and I share stories from birders around the world. Before I tell you what I've been up to, I have a request. You may have seen in the news that Hannah Bourne Taylor, the author of Fledgling and who I spoke to last year at Bird Fair, is doing an amazing job at the moment of raising awareness of the needs of swifts, an iconic summer visitor to the UK that has suffered a major decline in numbers due to a loss of suitable nest sites. They spend most of the year in Africa, but they come back to the UK every summer for around 12 weeks to nest and breed. They live the majority of their lives on the wing, only landing once at their nest sites to lay eggs and raise their young. They're known for having site fidelity. They come back to the same sites each year for their nests. Unfortunately, our housing practices have gradually eroded away at suitable nest sites. They're hole nesters and would normally nest in rocks or old buildings where there's pieces of brick missing. And of course, with our new builds, everything is bricked up. There are no gaps in the sides of houses, and plastic eaves and soffits have removed other possible holes. Hannah has created a petition to the government asking for swift bricks to be made compulsory in new housing to help these red-listed birds. These bricks are self-contained nests that don't cause any damage to the building at all. And it's such an easy thing to have them built in. We just need the requirements to be there for those that build the houses to include them. As swifts nest in colonies, having a lot of potential nest holes in their location would be a very positive step. Hannah is working so hard to raise this awareness of the swift's plight, and I'm really struck by her passion and her willingness to get out there and actually do something for the birds she loves. Now, Hannah needs 100,000 signatures for this petition to be considered for debate in Parliament, and as I'm speaking, we're currently at 79,500 signatures, and she only has until the end of April to get the required 100,000. So, if you're a UK resident, it would be awesome if you would sign the petition and ask people that you know to sign it as well. The link is in the episode notes. Please, please, please sign it. That was the dawn chorus from a couple of mornings ago, recorded from my bedroom window here in Hampshire in England. It was quite early in the morning, but absolutely glorious to hear the blackbirds, the robins, dunnock, wren and blue tits singing out. And of course they're all just defending their territories and calling for a mate, but it's music to my ears. As I sit here recording, it's the end of a glorious day. I've been working, so I've not been able to get outside much, but every now and then I've looked out the window to watch the birds in the garden, and at lunchtime I had a walk around the garden just to feel the springtime sun. We've had a couple of weeks where it's been not great weather, but yesterday and today the sun's out, the sky's blue, and all the birds are singing. And even on my little estate, it's just glorious to hear the blackbirds, the robins, even the rooks having a little chatter. And every now and then a goldfinch will fly over singing. So it's been a bit of a while since the last episode. A lot of that's down to time management, but also I have been out and about quite a bit. I've been really touched by the number of people who've inquired when a new episode will appear. So I hope you'll be happy to hear this one and know that I have many episodes ready to come out. Since the beginning of the year, I have recorded several interviews with some really wonderful people that I know you're going to enjoy listening to, and you'll hear those episodes in the next few weeks. And I actually have a couple of interviews still from last year that I wasn't able to share with you. So we've got quite a lot coming up in the casual birder world. I've also got a review of my birding from 2022, which I'm working on and has taken me a lot longer than expected to actually get finished, although it will seem strange having it partway through the year. For those of you that are interested in hearing what my birding was like last year, and especially that I visited some fantastic places, including Antarctica, I hope you'll enjoy hearing all about my tales. There will be special episodes just on Antarctica. It's too big a subject to deal with in just one episode. I recorded quite a bit while I was down there. I was able to go birding in Buenos Aires and Ushuaia in Argentina, and we visited Falkland, South Georgia and the Antarctic Peninsula. So not only with those visits, but also with the pelagic birding in between, it was just an amazing end to the year. And then I spent Christmas at Norfolk, as we've done in the last few years. I have been doing birding things. During January and the beginning of February, we were going out virtually every weekend when the weather allowed. And in February, I launched the Casual Birder Bird Club. It's a monthly club held virtually around the second Wednesday of each month. I've initially opened it to members of the show's Facebook group as I wanted to see what sort of interest there might be in the club. But it's absolutely open to any listener of the show. So it doesn't matter if you're not in the Facebook group, you're very welcome to join us. You can find the link in the show notes to express your interest, and then you don't have to attend every time. Each month I'll send you an email to let you know that it's coming up. And if you are able to attend, you just reply to let me know which session you want to attend, and I'll send you the Zoom link. So it's quite simple. We'll just do that on a month-by-month basis. So the first couple of sessions were very much a kind of getting to know you, getting to know all about our birding. And we've had around 10 members join us each time. So it's been quite a nice, cosy chat with people that I'm very familiar with in the Facebook group. But we're very welcoming, and absolutely, if you would like to be part of the virtual bird club, follow the link in the show notes and you can sign up to be alerted to whenever the club night is going to happen. Going forward, I'm hoping to book some people to give us talks about specialist subjects to do with birding. And I've already asked the people that have been attending what kind of topics they'd like to hear. So we've got a range of topics on bird ID, concerns people have about birding, and ways of just sharing our joy of birding with others. It's really interesting each month, actually, hearing what other people have done. I get so inspired by it because we often only have a limited time to go out birding, and to hear what other people are seeing really does inspire me to get back out there and see if I can see something similar. I have got a few thank yous and a few shout outs I'd like to do. First of all, I would especially like to thank members of the show's Facebook group who share their birding experiences, provide trip reports of the reserves and other bird-rich areas that they visit, and who support each other with identification help and just cheering each other on when we talk about the birds that we've seen that have brought us joy. They really are a fabulous group of people, and it gives me so much pleasure to read about their adventures. The Facebook group is open to all listeners of the show, and we'd love to have you join us if you're on Facebook. Check out the episode notes for the link. Now, while I was away in Argentina and the Southern Ocean last November, I had very little internet access, and I think I went away less than a week after I released my last episode, the one about the Finch's friend feeder, which incidentally is going strong in the garden and is very beloved by the small birds. But while I was away and I had very little internet access, Karin, our friend in Oulu in Finland, took over moderating duties of the Facebook group, and she kept everyone entertained with our weekly threads and responded to everyone's post to keep the community thriving. And I'd like to publicly thank Karin for devoting so much time to the benefit of the group. You are an absolute star, Karin. I'd also like to give a shout out to birders that I've met while out and about over the last couple of months. Chrissy and Phil, volunteer wardens at RSPB Titchwell, gave me some wonderful tips about local birds to see, including a vagrant Hume's warbler and pallid harrier. While I didn't manage to see the pallid harrier, I did find the Hume's warbler and met Katie and Andy on a very wet and windy day in Norfolk. John and I had just found the Hume's warbler, and we found it by listening beforehand to the sound of the Hume's warbler, which to me sounded a little bit like a pied wagtail's call. And we'd just heard that in the area where Chrissy and Phil had suggested that the Hume's warbler had been seen. And so we were very excited. And just as we were talking to each other about how we felt that was definitely the warbler, Katie and Andy joined us, and they had also heard about it and were wondering whether we'd seen it. And we had just then. And while we were talking about it and the call it made and confirming that that's what we'd heard, the little bird came out of a hiding and sang for us. It was only out in the open briefly. I was unable to get a photograph, but Andy got a wonderful photograph and Katie posted that on Instagram. So I was very pleased to actually see a picture of it. Later that week, we went to Hokum Estate, where we were hoping to see shorelark. And I met Harry and his parents who were visiting Norfolk from Oxford. Harry is a young birder and he has had some amazing sightings. And during the last year, he had seen a visiting nighthawk that had flown in from America and snow goose. He was there at Hokum hoping to see the shorelark as well. As I was talking to Harry, I heard a strange call in the field right by where we were standing. And it turned out to be grey partridge, which I had never seen. And that was a bird that I particularly wanted to add to my year list. And so having briefly spoken with Harry and his parents, I rushed off to get some photographs and make some more observations of these grey partridge, which are native to England. And I'd never seen in all my years. So I was really, really pleased to see those. But yeah, I hope, Harry, that you managed to see the shorelark as we did later on that day. I'd like to shout out to Val, a volunteer at the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust Reserve at Welney, who gave us lots of information about the birds we might see there and tipped us off about some holiday rentals run by the Wildfowl and Wetland Trust at Welney that we hope to use in the future. It was a day full of really heavy rain, and in fact the rain had been so hard for the last few days when we were up in Norfolk that the paths that you can usually walk around at Welney were impassable. But we were able to go and sit in the observation room. There were quite a few birds out in the water despite the horrible weather. So that was really nice. And actually it was quite nice to sit in the warm on comfy chairs and look out onto the lake, especially when the weather was so bad. I'd like to give a shout out to John and Helen, who we met at Blashford Lakes in the beginning of the year. John was using a Cly-Spy mule pack, a kind of rucksack that carries a tripod. And we'd just bought one and were waiting for its delivery. So we were keen to have a closer look at the constituent parts. And John and Helen mentioned that they were about to visit Costa Rica. And that's a destination on many birders' dream lists. So what a wonderful way for them to start 2023's birding. And we received our Cly-Spy mule pack a few days later, and we've been extremely pleased with it. And so I'd like to just say thank you to Rob and Alison Stevenson in our Facebook group, who had originally suggested that we might find one useful, as they use one all the time to carry their tripod for their scope. We visited quite a few reserves at the beginning of January, and one of them was one of my favourites, Titchfield Haven on the south coast. While there, we were on the beach, just looking to see what waders we might be able to see. And a birder named Ivor pointed out a common ringed plover with rings on its legs. And Ivor had previously researched the bird and found it had been ringed in Germany as a female with a chick. And this was its 6th winter at Titchfield Haven. And that was absolutely fascinating to learn. And I really thank Ivor for taking the time to tell us about that bird, because you know, sometimes you see these birds with rings, and I know that you can report the rings, but you don't always hear about the history behind it. So to hear about this tiny little bird that had been travelling around for 6 years was absolutely wonderful to hear about. We visited Denny Wood in the New Forest. Now, that was a site that had been recommended to us, and we had seen on eBird that a great grey shrike had been seen near there. So we took a day trip down, and we didn't have any luck seeing the Great Grey Shrike, but we met Jane and Kevin, and they gave us some tips on where we might see the shrike, which had apparently been back to that area for several years. Jane and Kevin also showed me a photo of a bittern they'd seen while on a boating holiday in the Norfolk Broads, reminding me to put that on our future holiday bucket list. So following Jane and Kevin's recommendations at Dennywood, we decided to stop at a site very close to Dennywood to try and see this Great Grey Shrike. And while there, we met Paul and Peter and Suzanne. We shared tips on local places to go birding and the best sites to see certain species. And while John and I didn't see the shrike that weekend, I found out later that they all had. Towards the end of the afternoon, we heard from another birder that the shrike had been seen over in Pigbush, a site we visited last year for the Global Big Day in May. But because it was towards the end of the afternoon, it just felt, I was getting a bit tired, to be honest. And it felt like, yes, it might be there, but it might not. This shrike was obviously covering quite a territory. So we decided, and we were really hungry and we hadn't had lunch, and it was quite late in the afternoon. So John and I wandered back to the car and had our lunch and still had to get home. But I found out later that Peter and Suzanne had seen the shrike by moving over to Pigbush, so I should have gone. But we went down the following weekend, and we were lucky to spend around an hour getting mostly distant views of the shrike, but definitely being able to see the shrike. And I met Nick from Somerset and a few other birders while there. When I'm out and about, I will talk to people, but only if they've indicated that they're interested in speaking. So mostly it's just a nod and a smile and that's it. But when we've been trying to see particular species, especially like this Great Grey Shrike, I've been amazed at how friendly everyone has been. People are willing to share their observations, willing to share what they've seen. So thank you, everyone that does make the effort to speak to others when you're out birding, because it helps people feel more welcome. And no matter what your skill level, when you're out birding and you can share a little bit of knowledge in a non-judgmental but helpful way, it just makes people feel like, yes, they can do this too. Shout out to Mel, who I got chatting to at the hair salon, and who has lots of starlings visiting her feeders, something that's rarely seen in many gardens nowadays. This was a couple of months ago when I spoke to Mel, 2 haircuts ago. But just today, I've found 2 starlings in my garden. And I've not had starlings in my garden since last summer. And then I've had 2 today, so I've been very pleased to see those. Another of our journeys out over weekends, we went to Southmoor Nature Reserve. Now, this was a new one for us. It's not too far from Farlington Marsh. And we'd gone there particularly to see the long-staying Sabine's gull, which is a visitor from more Arctic waters. And they are sometimes found in the UK, but this one was particularly long-staying. And it seemed to be in very good condition as well, which I was very pleased about, because I'm in 2 minds about going to see birds that have got off course and ended up here, because it feels to me like they might often be in poor condition, finding themselves in an area that they don't intend to be and trying to survive. Yes, it would be nice to see the bird, but not if it's suffering or not if it's not in great condition. I don't want to add to any stress that the bird has. But while out at Southmoor, and we did see the Sabine's gull, which was absolutely beautiful, we met Andrew, Tracy and Ali. And Andrew was wearing a Casual Birder podcast beanie hat, which was wonderful to see. So Andrew, I met last year, I think it was, down at Farlington Marsh, and he gave us lots of tips about local places to go, including Titchfield Haven, which has become one of my favourite places to go birding. And it was such a surprise to find Andrew and Tracy with their friend Ali down at this site in Southmoor, and even more of a surprise to see him wearing one of the show's hats. So that was really wonderful. We had to take a quick selfie together. But thank you so much to Andrew for spreading the word about the show. And on the subject of hats, Karin received hers and promptly saw 4 new species for the year when she wore it. And Rob and Alison said theirs had also been lucky for them. Now, I can't guarantee that you will always see new species wearing the show's hats, but it's worth giving it a go. You can buy your own beanie hat following the link on the show's website, casualbirder.com. And I realise that it's now getting out of the season for wearing woolly beanie hats. And I am looking at sourcing some bucket hats for summer wear, so keep a lookout. But while you're on the show's website, you can also look out for the key rings and badges that I have there. And there's also a link to the store where you can buy T-shirts, sweatshirts and hoodies, all with the show's logo. So take a look for that. So I can't believe that we're now in April. March, I didn't really manage to get out much. The weather wasn't great and we had some family events on that meant that I wasn't really able to go birding. But I did pick up another new bird for the year. Most unexpectedly, while I was waking up one morning in my parents' guest bedroom, I heard an unusual call outside. And I quickly used Merlin to try to find out what the call was. And it said Grey Wagtail. And I thought, well, that's a bit strange because in this cul-de-sac on a, suburban estate, that would be a strange thing to see. But it called out again. The birds called out again. And I was determined I was going to try and see them because they were clearly very close. So I rushed outside in my PJs and there indeed were 2 Grey Wagtails. And my mum said that they've actually been around before. They were there last year. I don't know if they've stayed all the way through the winter, but they nested nearby it. And it's strange because I thought they had to be near water. And there are some marshes within a sort of half a mile of where my parents live, but I didn't expect to see them walking down a cul-de-sac on pavement. But they were calling out from the rooftops as well. And I managed to see them a couple of times that weekend. So that was quite fun. But now we're in April and things are really ramping up. When I got back from Antarctica, I found that, because I'd had no internet access, so I was catching up on things, and I looked at our nest boxes and found that a blue tit had been roosting since the end of November in the garage nest box. And that was quite exciting. We only got the nest boxes last year with the cameras in, so we're still new to knowing what happens in the season of a nest box. But this blue tit was roosting overnight. And then in mid-January, it stopped roosting there overnight and just went. So I was a bit disappointed, but I thought, well, maybe that bird will come back and nest this year, having found the box. I don't know if it's the same bird, but over the last couple of weeks, a blue tit has been back to the box, checking it out, and started roosting overnight. And then yesterday morning, it started taking nesting material into the box and carried on today with some moss and greenery. So I'm extremely excited to see what's going to happen. I really hope that box will have a successful brood as it did last year. We've also got a nest box with a camera in our garden, and that one has also been checked out by some blue tits. I can't tell at the moment whether they're different blue tits because the one that's in the garage nest box has a strange sort of aberration of the plumage on its right cheek. So where it would normally have a white cheek, it's got a little black mark in it. Well, I noticed that one of the birds visiting the box in the garden also had this mark. So I've been trying desperately to match up the photographs to see, is this the same bird, checking out 2 boxes and deciding which one? Or actually, do we have 2 different birds in the neighbourhood that just happen to have this aberration? And I suppose if they're siblings from previous nests, they could have that same aberration. Anyway, time will tell, and I'm very excited to watch what happens with our nest boxes. A few weeks ago, we had a garden makeover, and I'd like to say thank you publicly to the landscape company that helped us, PJS Landscaping, because they managed to do the landscaping in a very short space of time. We decided to get this landscaping done in the garden, and one of the consequences of that was we no longer have our deck, which, it served us for a couple of years, but we always knew that it wasn't a great thing to have in a garden. So that's now gone. But the deck had a railing on the side of it where my friend Rooksy, the rook that has kind of befriended us, used to come in and land when it wanted to let us know that it was ready to receive some suet treats. And it would always come in and land on that and look in the kitchen window and let us know it was there. So it's a real shame that we no longer have that railing there. once everything had settled down from having the garden done, the birds have been visiting back again, and they're very happy with all the feeders and with all the perches that they now have. We have a little arbour and we have a pergola over a small patio at the back of the garden, and it gives the birds lots of perches. Of course, it does mean that we've got lots of poop over the patio, our brand new patio, but I can wash that off. But I was wondering what was going to happen with Rooksy. How would it let us know it was there? Because often it will call out, but if we can't see where it is, we might not notice it if it's not actually looking in the window. Well, it turns out Rooksy has been inventive and has now taken to walking on our patio, which is where the deck used to be, and standing looking into the window. So my husband works from our dining room, and when he's got the blinds open, he can see out into the garden when it's not too sunny. And Rooksy has taken to sort of parading up and down, looking in until either John or myself find out about it and I go down and feed it. So I'm really pleased that Rooksy's been coming back. But the last couple of days, Rooksy has been particularly interested in having mealworms as part of the treats that are put out. I've been soaking the mealworms in warm water to sort of rehydrate them a little, and then I'd throw them out with a spoon, an old spoon, because I don't want to touch them because they're a bit smelly. So I think Rooksy may have a nest and has changed the diet because is feeding chicks, and has brought in a second rook that has a slightly broken bill but seems to be always around with Rooksy. And this is her mate. We've decided to call the mate Billy because he's got a broken bill. The other rook that comes regularly to the garden is Patches, who I might have mentioned before. So named because it's got white wing feathers, which haven't grown out with a molt. So I think it's something that maybe is part of Patches' plumage. Patches also has feathery bits around its nostrils, so it hasn't yet got a totally bare face. I can't work out if it's a young bird that just hasn't got into its adult face yet, but all the others seem to do it quite quickly, or whether this particular bird just happens to have feathers on its face that it won't ever lose. But what Patches does is, if I'm up at my bedroom window doing my hair, I always have the curtain open so I can watch the birds while I'm, getting my hair dried or whatever. Or sometimes I'll just stand looking out at the garden to watch the birds. And if Patches sees me, it flies up to the gutter or the eaves just above the window and then just sits and looks over at me. It's quite endearing. It did it again this weekend. I was sitting on my bed working on the computer and I noticed a dark shape go up just above the window. So I thought I'd have a look out just to see if it might be Patches. And as I looked out the window, Patches was looking down over the gutter, looking in the window. So it was quite funny. It's just interesting how the different rooks have different little mannerisms that just tell them apart. But yes, I do take a lot of pleasure in my garden birds, and I hope they enjoy visiting the garden as well.
Hello, I'm Jack Perks, a wildlife cameraman, and in my spare time, I host the Bearded Tits podcast. Every Tuesday, I speak to scientists, celebrities, artists, and passionate people about the natural world. If you want a laid-back and easy-to-listen show, then tune in. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts, and I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.
So far this year, I've seen 115 species, which is absolutely amazing. You know that I'm a little bit of a lister now. I want to know that I'm seeing different birds, but we've really made an effort to go to different habitats this year within the county that we live, within Hampshire, and our bird identification is getting much, much better. On the 1st of April, I attended the Hampshire Ornithological Society's Members' Day. I joined the society earlier on this year, and it was really great, the Members' Day, actually. We had talks by Becky Spate, Chief Executive of the RSPB, who told us about what the RSPB's vision is, where their actions are going to be over the coming years, and told us about the places, the people, the science, the policy, and the species that they are particularly concentrating on. And that was really interesting. We also heard from Juliet Vickery, Chief Executive of the British Trust for Ornithology, who gave a really interesting talk about how citizen science or community science can help us to understand and conserve bird species. And as a result of that talk, we have signed up to take part in a woodcock survey in the local area. And also I've downloaded the Bird Track app to start making observations to help with the data collection for the British Trust for Ornithology. Now, I still use eBird, and what I plan to do is when I'm out and about with my husband, he'll keep our records on eBird and share his list with me, and I'll enter my records on BirdTrack, and that way we're sharing our data further. So that's my plan anyway. After that, we heard from John Clark, who's the author of a book called The Rare Birds of Hampshire. And that was fascinating to hear about all the various birds that had ever been in Hampshire over the last, 150 years, many of which were just one-off occasions, and you would have been very lucky to see it. In the afternoon, we had an absolutely awesome talk by James Aldred, who's an award-winning camera operator and author of the book Goshawk Summer. Now, he talked all about his experiences being up on a platform in a tree, filming the breeding success of a pair of goshawks for one summer. He had some absolutely amazing tales, and I can't wait to read his book. And who knows, we might be lucky enough to get him on the show as well. And then the afternoon was finished by a wonderful kind of whistle-stop tour around the world with David Lindo, the urban birder. Now, he particularly pointed out how you can just see birds wherever you are. And even in the most urban environment, there will be birds around. And it's always important to keep looking up, as he says. But he also shared some fantastic birding locations around the world that he's been to, and had some great stories. It's always great to hear from David. And once again, I hope he's someone that you'll be hearing from on this show this year. It was really great to go to the Members' Day, and I caught up with Maya Bambrick there as well. Maya's going to be doing some walks for charity later this year. She's wonderful on Instagram and is one of our great young naturalists. Coming up in May, on May the 13th, it's the Global Big Day. And once again, the Casual Birder podcast will be putting forward a team to take part. If you'd like to join us and be part of our virtual team, we'll be raising funds for BirdLife International, and we will be pooling all of our results and hopefully making our way into the records for the teams. So on the Global Big Day, you just go out birding for as long as you want, and for some of us, we will be out birding all day long, doing many, many checklists. And for others, it will be whatever they can manage. So if you think you'll be birding on Saturday, the 13th of May, and you want to be part of the Casual Birder podcast team, once again, look in the episode notes and you'll find a link there to be able to sign up for information about the event, and I'll get you on the team. It'll be lovely to have you there. We usually have around 25 to 30 members of the team around the world. And it's really wonderful. We're all out there birding wherever we are. Sometimes we have people from Australia joining in. We've usually got people from Europe, and then obviously in the UK, and from America and Canada. And as the day progresses, it's great to see the sightings coming in, and all the checklists are shared with our team account. And you don't have to be an expert birder. It's all about getting out there and enjoying the birds, and then just keeping records of the birds that you can identify. But if you'd like to take part, again, the link will be in the show notes. My birthday's coming up at the end of this week, and I usually do a birthday bird watch. So if you're around and you want to take part in that, let me know on social media what birds you see. Well, I think that's probably it for this episode. I've been gone too long, and I won't leave you hanging for as long next time. I've tried to do this episode a slightly different way, with speaking more freeform, which might give me a bit of a headache with editing, but we'll see. But I'm interested to hear what you think. I usually do very scripted episodes, but I keep having things to tell you and then not getting round to doing the episode. So I was determined I'm just going to sit here tonight and I'm just going to speak to you and share my joy of the birds that I've been seeing. And I hope that you've been having similar experiences, but do let me know, because I absolutely love hearing from you. If you've enjoyed the show, do listen again and tell a friend about it. My thanks to Randy Braun for designing the artwork for the show. The theme music is Short Sleeve Shirt by the Drones. Thanks to them for letting me use it. Check out their website at dronesmusic.net. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you'll join me again for another episode of the Casual Birder podcast.